Hello and welcome to this week's reading vlog. This week I don't have any particular plans of what I'm going to read apart from the first book that I will pick up this evening hopefully, which is The Year of the Witching by Alexis Henderson. I'm really looking forward to starting this book. I've heard mixed things on BookTube from other readers about this book, but it seems to be a concept of a book that I haven't read much like before. I don't read a ton of books about witches anyway, and this sort of historical setting of witches, I'm assuming harking back to kind of the witch burning days where it was very much a taboo subject, seems to be quite an interesting idea for a book, especially YA actually. It's a good theme to get into in that type of reading rather than a really serious adult book. So I'm looking forward to starting it. I know very little about the book, as you can probably tell. I know we have a young woman as our protagonist who is somewhat of an outcast in her society and has some association with the witches, but I don't really know much beyond that. But hopefully I will find out very soon, and as I do, I will let you know, of course. So I'm going to be reading this one via Kindle on my computer because I don't have a Kindle, but I have the Kindle app, so it's just as good. I wanted to get this one from my library, but unfortunately I did reserve it, but it wasn't in time for this month's TBR, so I definitely still want to read this book in October, so Kindle was my other option, so there we are. So I will be starting that one this evening. I don't think it will take me too long this week to get through it, probably across maybe 3 nights I should get through this. I think I read a little slower looking at a screen than I would with physical pages, but nevertheless I think probably 3 nights I can get through this one, so I will definitely be reading another book or two this week as well, but as yet I haven't decided which one I want to pick up. Perhaps one of the middle grades, perhaps I'll jump back into some fantasy and start Lord of Chaos, I don't know. Stay tuned to find out. So let's get reading. Hello, so I have come out after work to do a spot of shopping. I have a few errands I need to run. I want to pop into a couple of shops and try and get some more autumn candles because you can never have enough autumn candles, and I haven't been to places like HomeSense for a really long time, so it might be fun to have a little wander around there. And I also plan to take a trip obviously into Waterstones and see if there's anything that catches my eye that I think I might want to pick up. Again, I don't need any more books, but it's always gratifying to have a little wander around and just soak up the atmosphere if nothing else. But I'm sure I will make 1 or 2 purchases, so I thought I would bring you along with me. Hello, so shopping completed. I didn't end up picking that up that much in the end. I wasn't in the mood to be wandering about with lots of people and it was very hot and horrible in there, so it wasn't the most pleasurable trip, but I did visit both HomeSense and Waterstones, which I very much wanted to, and I have picked up a couple of things which I'm really excited about, so I thought I would just show you. So first of all, HomeSense. I always love browsing all the interesting interior things and planning what I would do with them in my own house or in a future property I might own, but sadly did not justify picking up any of those. However, I did get yet another autumn candle, which I was hoping for and found an absolute beauty. So this is, oh, it matches my jumper. This is called Maple Pumpkin. It's by DW Home and it is absolutely lovely. It's in this sort of smoked glass effect in this lovely chestnut brown.
and it smells absolutely lovely. So I'm really excited to add that one to my little collection on the shelf, probably on my windowsill or by my bed or something, and light this one when I get home, I think. The only other thing I picked up from HomeSense was a sketchbook, which I'm excited to use, but you don't need to see. And then in Waterstones, I only picked up 2 books, but I'm very happy with both of them. So first of all, I was absolutely thrilled to find a copy of The Once and Future Witches by Alex E. Harrow. I read this at the very, very start of the year, back in January, I think, and absolutely fell in love with this. I listened to it via audiobook and was just desperate for the paperback to be released so that I could buy a copy to add to my collection. And I'm very happy to say the paperback is now here and I now own a copy, and I really want to reread this, but I don't think I can justify it probably until the new year. But anyway, I love this book so much. If you haven't read this, please do. It's absolutely wonderful. It's the perfect blend of history with a little bit of magic thrown in, a brilliant relationship between 3 sisters. You have kind of feminist themes around the suffragist movement. It's just an altogether brilliant story, and I really would recommend this book. The writing is also tremendous. I love the way it's written. The second one I picked up is a continuation of a series which I've been reading. So this is The Golden Cage by J.D. Oswald, and this is a continuation of The Ballad of Sir Benfro, I think the series is called. Benfro being a dragon who is one of the characters in the book. So this is the third, I think, of a 5-book series so far. I'm not entirely sure. But there's definitely at least one more after this, I'm pretty sure too. So this book follows a young boy called Errol who grows up in a village in a forest, is always a little bit the outcast, but ends up going to some sort of academy to learn how to basically hunt dragons and to kind of overcome magic in their society, and dragons specifically are particularly looked down upon and they are hunted mercilessly across the land. And so Errol, erroneously if you like, gets drawn into that before he knows any different, but once he's there discovers a little bit more about the situation and perhaps things change. And our other protagonist is, as I said, Benfro the dragon, who again is raised in this small settlement by his mother in the forest. His mother is some sort of mage, I think, or like studies magic, basically. All the things that Errol's society shun is living, obviously, in Benfro's society. He's the only young dragon in that society, so he's surrounded by these elders who have all this knowledge and all these stories, and he very much wants to learn and grow up and become like them. And the 2 characters eventually have intertwining storylines. I can't really tell you anymore. That was just the start of the first book. This is now the third, as I said. But I find these really like cozy fairy tale-esque type fantasies. I really enjoy reading these. So I'm very much looking forward to getting to this one, hopefully on my November TBR. So without further ado, let's drive home. It's getting very, very dark, so I want to be indoors and be cozy and to get to reading. I'm going to have to very much rein myself in from wanting to start one of these that I've just bought, though. I can't afford to do that. I have many books left on my TBR. So I think I will read some more of Year of the Witching this evening. I'm getting on pretty well with that one. I've read about a third of it now via the Kindle ebook. I don't like reading ebooks, but I did actually see it in Waterstones, but I didn't want to buy a copy in case I don't end up loving it enough to want to keep it. I'm enjoying it so far, but I have no idea where the story is going in terms of whether I will love it or whether I'll find it just kind of average. So we will see. I will read some more tonight and update you on my thoughts.
Hello! So you joined me for yet another cosy reading night. I'm loving how much of a habit this is becoming throughout October, and I have a slightly different background today. I'm sat downstairs in my living room, so I have a different selection of cosy lighting, plus my beautiful Cozy Fall Reads candle from Grace and Honey, Becca's Candle Shop, which is a just gorgeous scent, and I'm really, really enjoying the ambience that it's creating. So this evening I have decided to add another book to my TBR, but it is only a very, very short one, so it will not take me very long, but is the perfect thing for this cosy evening. So the book I'm going to be reading is The Body Snatcher by Robert Louis Stevenson, and I'm actually going to be listening to it as an audiobook, but not just any audiobook. Ashley from A Frolic Through Fiction has been doing a series of videos recently where she basically reads short gothic stories to us, along with some lovely ambience and background sounds, a little bit ASMR style. And this actually is a story that I'd been meaning to read for quite some time. I'd heard very good things about it. I do love a gothic story, and I'm very interested in that period of history that it depicts, where body snatching was a real thing. It was used to supply anatomy demonstrations, if you like, for the up-and-coming doctors and medical students in Victorian times. So this particular book, I believe, is set in Edinburgh and follows just that very storyline, but with a little bit of a spooky twist, I believe. So I'm very excited to get into the story. I'm going to be listening to Ashley's narration, but also reading along on the screen as well. It's a very, very short book, as I said. It's a short story. I wouldn't personally class it as a book, but it is listed on Goodreads as a book in its own right, so I'm going to count it. And therefore I will have added yet another book to my yearly goal, but also to my TBR for October. I think it will be the perfect story for an evening like this. It is very wild and horrible and cold outside, so hence my beautiful cosy setup. So I am going to sit down now and listen and read along to that lovely story, and I will let you know shortly what my thoughts are. Hello, so I am back. It looks like I haven't been away at all, but in fact I have, and I have finished listening to the story of The Body Snatcher by Robert Louis Stevenson. It only took me about half an hour. It's a very, very short story, as I said, but I thoroughly enjoyed it, and it's the perfect start to my cosy evening. So Ashley narrated it beautifully, and I loved reading along on the screen as well. It's a really classic gothic story, this. Very short, as I said, but enough to really get a feel for these almost eccentric characters that are portrayed, to get the atmosphere, the ambience of this really creepy type environment. I love the way that gothic stories utilise descriptions, and you always have the wild weather, and you have these descriptions of characters' behaviour and the places that they frequent. It just really sets the scene beautifully, and you absolutely feel like you are in the story. And the little twist at the end was wonderful, very spooky, and definitely wasn't sure how to interpret that one. And that's another thing I love about gothic books, that there is usually a thread that's open to interpretation. Is there some sort of supernatural element? Can it all be explained away? What's really going on? And wonderfully, it didn't actually solve that question for us, so you're left on a cliffhanger and you can fill in the blanks yourself. So a thoroughly enjoyable book. I'm going to give it 4 out of 5 stars, and now I'm going to pick up something else and carry on my lovely cosy evening. I have the perfect setup, so I'm not going to waste this. I will check in with you again very soon and let you know what else I have read. Hello, so it is Saturday evening and I've decided to do a little bit of a reading challenge for myself. I am on call for work anyway, so I never sleep very well. I'm constantly expecting my phone to ring, so I thought I would use the time productively and decide to stay up for as much of the night as I can and read as much as I can to really make some progress with my October TBR. So stay tuned for some footage and I will let you know in the morning how I did. Starting off the evening well with some tea and some autumn forest ambience. The perfect cosy night in. Hello, so it is now Sunday morning and my little overnight reading challenge went rather well. First of all, I didn't have to go into work, which was marvellous, but I did make it till about 3:10 in the morning reading, and I got through an entire book and started another, so I will just take you through that now. I have only had, however, about 3 hours sleep, so much coffee is needed. So the book that I read in its entirety was The Graveyard Book by Neil Gaiman. I'd been really excited to get to this book. I've heard so many people raving about it, and it just seemed like the perfect spooky middle grade to get to. It wasn't quite what I expected in that it was actually a lot darker. I mean, it does start with a triple murder, so obviously it's never going to be just light and fluffy. But some of the themes within it and some of the scenes towards the end as well were a lot more grim than I was expecting for a children's book. And I think you can definitely read this as an adult, as I did, and completely enjoy it and not think of it as a children's book. But equally, I think I would have really enjoyed this had I read it as the target audience as well. I think Neil Gaiman's very cleverly written it to appeal to all ages, which is a very clever trait. So it was a very cute story, as I said. It follows a little boy called Bod who grows up in a graveyard following the murder of his family at the very beginning of the book, and it's almost told kind of in an episodic fashion, and that every chapter follows Bod at a different point in his life, encountering different supernatural beings or having adventures, and there's a little bit of like a moral story to each section as well. So it's a perfect growing up story with Bod from being a baby to being about 15 years old at the end. I love some of the characters. Silas is wonderful. I think he's absolutely incredible. And just the descriptions of some of these supernatural entities and how character driven all of the ghosts are as well, and it's just a lot of fun. So I really enjoyed this. It's a 4 out of 5 stars, which is pretty good for a middle grade. I never give them 5 stars, so about top level for middle grade really in my book, and I really enjoyed it. I'm glad I finally got round to reading this one. I listened to it partly on audiobook narrated by Neil Gaiman himself, which was very good. I had previously listened to him narrate his novel Stardust, which was also wonderful, so I would highly recommend him as an audiobook narrator. He has such a charismatic, almost sarcastic voice in places, and it really works for his writing style. So definitely check that one out. But I did also in part read it an ebook as well. Obviously I didn't have my lights on, so I needed something that wasn't going to be a physical read. But it was good to have the balance of different formats, and I thoroughly enjoyed this read. I have also started this morning, when it was getting a little lighter, Lord of Chaos by Robert Jordan. This is the 6th book now in the Wheel of Time series. I've been slowly working my way through this series over the past sort of 6 months or so, and I'm now up to book 6, as I said. It's a very chunky book, as you've probably seen in a bit of B-roll. It's nearly 1,000 pages long, this book. It's a beast, and I don't know how on earth I'm going to finish this in the next 6 days before I go on holiday, but that is my challenge to myself, so you will see the most of this book in next week's vlog. But I just wanted to document that I have actually started it, and I'm going to try and get through maybe 150 pages a day. That should just about be enough to get me through it, so fingers crossed we can achieve that. So I'm heading out now for the day, but I will hopefully read a little bit more of that later and then wrap this vlog up. Hello, it is a very cold, wet and horrible Sunday afternoon, but I'm just heading out for a little bit of a walk in the woods. I just fancy some fresh air, and I want to make the most of seeing autumn this year, whether it be raining or not. So I will have a short walk and hopefully take a little bit of footage to show you what I see. Hello, so it is Sunday evening. I'm now back from my walk. A little worse for wear with the weather. It did actually start raining, unfortunately, when I was out, but I managed a lovely walk first. Only got rained on the way back, so we can take that. And it's very autumnal, so I don't really mind going out and getting cosy. after being in the wild weather, so it's all good. So I'm just checking in to wrap up this vlog. I've had a very successful week of reading. As you've seen, I've got through lots of different books, very varied genres again, which is something I've really enjoyed throughout October. So I'm just going to summarise them here and then wrap this one up for the week. So firstly, I finished, and I don't think I actually updated you that I had finished this, but I completed The Year of the Witching by Alexis Henderson, which I thoroughly enjoyed. A really, really good book. I wasn't sure with this one whether I was going to end up really liking it or being a bit disappointed and underwhelmed, but it was the former. I loved this book. It wasn't quite 5 stars, but certainly a solid 4. It was a YA sort of historical, fantastical type book with a lot of witchy themes, which I was very much in the mood for. I wanted a witchy book for Halloween, and this was exactly what I hoped it would be. It was an interesting take on witches, putting them in a very historical setting, in that you harked back to some of the days of the witch burning and the very religious-led societies who treated any kind of magic as a very taboo subject. But it did feel a little more fantastical in the elements of the witches that we had there. So it was a very good blend of historical and a little bit more of a magical twist. I loved our main character. I loved the way the story was told. I loved how dark it felt, even, you know, for a YA. It was very dark because it felt almost real, and that was the darkness about it, that the attitudes towards women of that society and the beliefs about the witches and about the magic all stemmed from beliefs that were held by people way back in history. So it did give it that grounding feel, which made it all more spooky actually. But a very enjoyable book. I would definitely reread this. I'm thinking about purchasing a physical copy for my collection because I think it would fit very nicely with some of my other reads, and I would love to be able to dip back into that atmosphere and that spooky feel of the story once again. So a very good start with that one. I then also have read another spooky book, but a little different, was The Graveyard Book by Neil Gaiman, which was a middle grade. As I said at the time, this again was darker than I expected in terms of it's a middle grade story, it's written for children, but if I was 10 years old and reading this, I'd be scared to death at certain sections. But it was good in a way, reading it as an adult, that you had certain things that you could appreciate and you could see a little bit more depth into, which perhaps a younger audience would not. It was so atmospheric, this book. Again, everything I hoped it would be and more. It was beautifully written. I am a fan of Neil Gaiman's more whimsical works, and this definitely was up there. It was a lovely sort of cosy feel to the story, despite there being murder and all sorts in there. It did feel very cosy because you were watching this little boy grow up and all of these supernatural entities around him, which ordinarily should be very scary, but somehow felt very cosy and comforting, and the graveyard just felt like home, even though it's supposed to be a graveyard and very scary. So it was a lovely play on themes there, and I really enjoyed this book. I read it pretty much in one sitting, and I would highly recommend both reading it and listening to Neil Gaiman narrate his own audiobook. A very, very good performance. I liked it a lot. That one also was a 4-star, by the way, which is about the highest I ever rate a middle grade, so a pretty good one there. Next up, I also have read The Body Snatcher by Robert Louis Stevenson. This was a very short story. I read this after watching Ashley from a Frolic Through Fictions video. I listened to her narration and read along with that as well. That one only took me about half an hour. It's a very short story, but again, wonderfully atmospheric. There is a theme with the books of this week. I've had a wonderful time with all this autumn atmosphere. So this one was a lovely gothic traditional story set in Edinburgh in Victorian times, with a couple of people involved in the very nefarious business of body snatching to obtain specimens for medical investigations and practice. It's a horribly creepy concept, and again, all the more scary for the fact that this actually happened. There is a lot of documented evidence in history of grave robbers and people whisking away dead bodies into the night. But again, with a little bit of a supernatural twist at the end, an unexplained question, and I loved this one. It was so atmospheric. I would love to read more things like this, more gothic stories, so I shall definitely be looking out for more things along these lines. And then the final thing I've read this week, I've only very much just started. I've read the first chapter or two, I think, and that is Lord of Chaos by Robert Jordan, the 6th book in the Wheel of Time series. So going back to very traditional fantasy, nothing spooky or autumnal about this one, except for the fact that fantasy can be cosy, I suppose, for this time of year. But it was a book on my TBR. I've been trying to get through these fairly regularly throughout the year, and this is the next one. It is going to take me quite a while because it's an enormous book, but I'm liking what I'm reading so far, and I'm excited to carry on with that one next week. So, a very successful week of reading, as you can see. Thank you very much for watching. As always, give this video a like down below if you enjoyed it. Leave me a comment about any of the books I've read, anything else you'd like to chat to me about. What is your favourite autumn read? Do let me know. And please consider subscribing if you'd like to see more from me. It really, really means a lot to me. I will see you next week with another video, but goodbye for now.